Welcome to the first ever episode of Sunday Morning Champion, brought to you by 3D Boxing. What a night last night was. Texas showing Texas love. I love it. Dallas, Fort Worth, the DFW area, North Texas. Put your hands up, make some noise, because Errol Spence is one of the best fighters in the world, and what a performance he put on last night. Errol Spence was definitely the brightest star in the Lone Star State last night. The first round knockout, a one-punch body shot over Carlos Ocampo. That sent him to the floor, where he remained for several minutes in excruciating pain. One of the best knockouts I've seen, one punch body knockouts that I've seen, rivaling anything that Roy Jones Jr. did with Virgil Hill back in the 90s. So what an amazing body shot, an amazing performance last night by Errol Spence to end that in less than one round. Texas has long run football, but it's now also running boxing. The Charlo brothers from Houston were front row last night. We saw Mighty Mo Hooker capture a 140-pound strap last week, doing so in Turbo Terry Flanagan's backyard. We have the Figueroa brothers, Brandon and Omar, making a lot of noise at featherweight and 140 also. And then we have a couple prospects, Virgil Ortiz, the Golden Boy prospect. And on the undercard, on the untelevised undercard, we saw a prospect named Pork Chop, Alejandro Guerrero, a 130-pound prospect that trains with Robert Garcia, who is an Irving native. Right now, Texas is doing huge things in the sport of boxing. None of them brighter than Errol Spence, though, and what a performance that was. And again, thank you for joining us, our first ever edition of Sunday Morning Champion 3D Boxing. So, lots of news to get to. The Spence with Ocampo fight, obviously the biggest story. So let's get started with that. And there's not much to talk about. Ocampo came out well. He does some things well. He was aggressive. He took the fight right to Errol Spence. That ultimately proved to be his demise. But at just 22, you can see that Ocampo has somewhat of a future. I don't know if he'll ever be a world champion or anything like that. But he's a counterpuncher who can also come forward. He's long. He's 5'10". He's a big, strong welterweight. You can see that Errol Spence, who's a massive welterweight, wasn't really any bigger. If he was bigger, he wasn't bigger by much than Ocampo. Ocampo is strong, big welterweight. He landed a nice combination to Spence's body about a minute and a half into the round, but that was about it. Spence landed the one body shot at the end of the first round, and that was it. And that shot could land at any point. That could land in the third round, fifth round, sixth round. It just happened to land in the first, and when it landed, no one is getting back up in 10 seconds after they get hit by something like that. You could see he stayed on the ground for several minutes. Just excruciating pain. So Errol Spence successfully defended his IBF strap, and called out all the other champions at the end of the night. It was asked by Jim Gregg who he wanted to fight next, and he said he wanted to unify the straps. So that leaves us with a couple of different options, correct? The winner of Danny Garcia with Showtime Porter. That will take place on August 25th in the Barclays Center. Spence was asked about that fight. He said he would love that fight, but it probably won't happen until next year. Neither Showtime Porter nor Swift Garcia have been overly active, so I wouldn't expect them to take a fight in August and then turn around and fight again before the end of 2018. That would be 3 fights in 1 year for Garcia. He hasn't, if he should win, he hasn't done that. He hasn't fought 3 times in a year. In many, many years, I wouldn't expect that to change. And Porter, Showtime Porter's really been a once-a-year fighter for a while now. I wouldn't expect him to fight in August and then turn around again and fight before the end of the year. So Spence said he wants to make that fight as soon as possible, but that probably won't be until early 2019. So what else could Spence do before the end of this year? Well, there's another champion, Keith Thurman. One time every year and a half Thurman. Who's still on maternity leave. He's fought just twice now in going on 3 years. So we don't expect that to be made anytime soon. He's still enjoying his maternity leave, and who knows if and when he'll be back. Are there any other champions at 147? Is there anyone? Oh, yeah, there's one other champion, Terrence Bud Crawford, the number 1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world. that would make an interesting fight. Last year, Errol Spence told Crawford that if he wanted a fight to go take the WBO strap, go take the belt off Jeff Horn, and then come see him. Well, guess what, Spence? Crawford's done that. You gave the number one pound for pound fighter in the world, which is Terrence Crawford, and don't be mistaken, Terrence Crawford's the best fighter in the world. You gave him an ultimatum. He met that demand, and now he's looking for a fight. We are going to criticize fighters for unifying. We always want every fighter to become undisputed. Just like we didn't criticize Anthony Joshua when he opted to fight Joseph Parker instead of Deontay Wilder. Because if you want to be undisputed, you need to get all the belts, so you need to beat all the champions. And it shouldn't really matter what order that you do it. So Joshua opted for Parker first, and that's fine, as long as he fights Wilder next. And that seems like the offer should be made, so he needs to take that fight. And in the same breath, we wouldn't normally criticize Errol Spence for taking a fight with Garcia or Porter if he should win first, except he gave Crawford an ultimatum. He said, if you want to fight, go get the belt off of Horn. Well, he did just that. So let's put Bob Arum, Al Heyman, yourself, and Terrence Crawford in a conference room, lock the door, and not come out until a contract is signed. Because that's maybe not the biggest fight in the sport, money-wise, although it's one of the biggest. It certainly is the best fight that can be made in the sport of boxing right now in 2018. Both fighters are available. Crawford just took the belt off of Horn last week, so the timing lines up perfectly. There's plenty of time to make this left in the year. Crawford's scheduled to fight again in October, according to Bob Arum. Let's make that fight. Let's get Spence in a room. He made his mandatory. He's got wide open schedule. Crawford's already got a date scheduled in October. Spence can easily come back and return to the ring in October. He barely broke a sweat last night. This would give him, this is June, July, August, over 4 months to get ready for a date with Crawford, and that's plenty of time. The timing would line up perfectly, and it's the best fight that can be made. So if we're going to be critical of Keith Thurman and other champions for not unifying and not sticking to their word like Thurman has so many times, saying he was going to be back in January, then be back in March, and then be back in April against Jesse Vargas, and then be back in May, and then be back in August, and none of those things have happened, and he's saying that he's not, a fight with Spence is not on the table, it's not discussable. Well, Errol Spence, then we need to criticize him as well, because he said he would be willing to fight Bud when he unified the other belts. Well, that's not what you said. You said last year that if Bud wanted to fight, he needed to go get Horn's belt, and he did just that. That's the best fight that can be made, and it can be made, like Terrence Crawford pointed out before. He's fought Al Heyman fighters before. None of them would generate as much money as this fight would right now. Two of the hottest boxers in the sport, the two best American fighters in the sport. There's no reason not to make the fight. Now, how would the fight go? Well, this would be something unique. There's no one more skilled in the sport right now than Terrence Crawford. Two-fisted power puncher. Excellent jab. He could switch to a southpaw stance and win the battle of the jabs with Spence. This would be an incredibly difficult fight for Spence. If there were any questions about the strength and power that Crawford would carry to 147, that's all been answered. We're not going to make any predictions today, but obviously that fight would be extremely difficult for both fighters. It would be way more difficult than, say, Garcia or Porter. It seems that Showtime Porter, if he should win it, that's very likely. It's a 50-50 fight with him and Danny in August in Barclays. If Showtime does win that fight, his aggression seems to be tailor-made for Errol Spence, and he would walk into a knockout. Danny Garcia is a better counterpuncher. And he's not a world-class counterpuncher. He's a good counterpuncher. He could use some of Spence's aggression against him and go rounds and maybe go the distance with him. But it would be too much. Spence is the bigger, stronger man. And if you saw Brandon Rios at times be able to get to Danny and able to land uppercuts and able to track Danny down, Errol Spence would have a much easier time than that. As Errol Spence is a far, far, far superior boxer with far, far, far superior size, strength, and ability to a flat-footed Brandon Rios. A lot of times we think of Spence as just a flat-footed, slow, plodding fighter. That's really not the case. He's not hyper-athletic. Crawford would be a better athlete. Danny may be a better athlete. But he's not a slow, plodding fighter. He's a special body puncher. I mean, it may be time to put Spence in the realm of all-time special body punchers, along with guys like Chavez Sr., guys like Duran, a lot of Mexican fighters. He's that good. This is the 9th opponent out of his brief career that he's dropped with a body shot, and this was absolutely a vicious body shot. Like, again, this rivals only the Roy Jones to Virgil Hill body shot back in the 90s as the best one-punch body knockout I've seen in many, many years. This was truly something special. Spence called himself the body snatcher to Jim Gray after the fight, and that's truly a fitting nickname. For Spence, Terrence Crawford is also one hell of a body puncher. You can ask Ndongo about that. You saw his body punching on full display against Horn as well. There's not much not to like about a potential Crawford and Spence unification bout. These truly are the two best American fighters in the sport right now. They're two all-action fighters. They're two fan-friendly fighters, and they're two fighters who like to punish each other. There's a mean streak in Terrence Crawford that's obvious. Both guys are nice guys, the guys you'd want to sit down and talk to. I'm in Dallas. I've gotten to talk to Spence quite a bit. He's the nicest guy in the world. Crawford seems to be that way too. In the ring, though, there is certainly a mean streak in them. And they're going for the knockout, and they like to punish their opponent. Spence said at the end of the fight that he was disappointed that he didn't get to punish Ocampo more in front of his home crowd. That's the type of fighters that we have here. Could Spence wear down Crawford? Because Crawford's going to be the better fighter in the ring. He's going to be the more skilled boxer and the better athlete in the ring. He's also strong. Is he going to be as strong as Spence? We don't know, but anything that he showed against Horn would indicate that he is. Now, I'm not trying to be strictly on the Crawford bandwagon. Spence could certainly win this fight. Spence has the style to wear Crawford down. We saw Crawford buzzed by Yuriorkis Gamboa, who was a glorified featherweight. If he could get to Crawford, Spence certainly could knock him out. Spence has gifted one-punch power, and he likes to beat people up. So this fight could definitely go either way. We're not going to make any predictions until that fight is formally announced, which we don't see happening necessarily in the foreseeable future. If Spence doesn't make a fight with Crawford next and he wants to fight again at the end of the year, we would like to know. Leave it in the comments below who you think is a realistic opponent for Errol Spence to fight by the end of the year. We've heard Devin Alexander, a couple other names floating around. Jesse Vargas is a possibility, and these are decent fights, but they're nothing that is earth shattering. Broner's name's been floated around. That's nothing we'd want to see. That would be a beatdown. Vargas would be an okay fight. Collazo would be an okay fight. He's called him out, but none of these things are really earth-shattering. They'd be more stay-busy fights for Errol Spence. But let us know who you want Errol Spence to fight next. Whether that's Thurman, the winner of Swift and Showtime, or Bud. And if those can't be made, well, who should he stay busy with? Who should Spence stay busy with next? And who should Crawford stay busy with too? I think the winner of Pacquiao with Matisse would be a perfect opponent for Terrence Bud Crawford. Let me know what you think. Leave your comments below. I want to give a special shout out to all the fathers on this Father's Day. Thank you for all that you do. Special thanks to my dad. Love you, and God bless.
Enjoy 3D Boxing Vlog videos? Show us some love by clicking the like button. Don't miss a tweet, post, story, or video. 3dboxingvlog.com is also on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Hit the subscribe button now to stay inside the ring.